Friends, very good evening to everybody. I welcome you all where we are gathered for the concluding day of this technological changes or advancements in income tax, GST, and audits. Income tax and GST got over yesterday, and today we have a very important topic where we are all awaiting to see how things are going to change tomorrow. Whether it will be the same old way where we'll be able to complete the audits. Definitely, it is not going to happen. So, what are the precautions we have to take? As I told you, there are always certain things for which technology cannot be a substitute, be it your professional skepticism, be it your professional judgment, other things where we'll have to rely on traditional things. But having said that, technology can be a great aid for doing things in a better way, especially when we have challenges like COVID today. I'm probably taking a cue from that. Tomorrow, even when there are no challenges, we can, for the ease of it or sake of doing it in a better way, we'll be able to use technology. So for which we have with us our beloved speaker CAG Rengarajan from Kochi. Also joining with me C Abhishek Murli, Secretary of ARC. So we are eagerly waiting to hear from CAG Rengarajan as to how things are going to change in the way we do audits and what are the changes that have already come. And my request or suggestion to everybody who are viewing this program is kindly, to the possible extent, use your computer or laptop, because the viewing and the experience is better. To the lot of features available when you use a computer or laptop, which gets limited once you use your mobile or this thing. And if you're using mobile or iPad for various reasons, to try to use a headphone so that you are able to enjoy the presentation. So now I request C. Abhishek Murli to formally introduce the speaker. And one more thing, the handouts are already available in the handouts tab, which you can download. In fact, all the three materials are available. The one on income tax, GST, and today's one, you can download that and make use of it. Later, it will be posted in the website also. Abhishek, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Very good evening to all. Unmute. I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
You are good.
Okay. A very good evening to all the viewers. A very good evening to the dynamic chairman of SARC, Shri C.A. Dungarchand Jain, who's joining us live from Madurai. We also have with us the speaker for the day, CAG Rengarajan, who's joining us live from Cochin. We have a great session planned for you today. And if you've been following the last two sessions, we have got very, very good feedback. And I'm sure this session is also going to be no less. As the chairman rightly said, and as I was discussing with the speaker just before the program started, a lot of remote audits are now taking place. The entire scenario of how technology is being used in audit has suddenly been transformed. It has been transformed in the last few months, and we might be aware of this already. This COVID issue is not going away soon, so having that social distancing norms is better. So therefore, it becomes even more imperative why today's session is going to be very, very important to all of us. Audit time is coming up. The year end is over. People have started closing their books of accounts and audits are going to begin. So given this backdrop, we have to be prepared for this. And for this, we have a great speaker, someone with enough experience both in normal audit and remote audit also, as he was telling us. I'm very pleased to formally introduce our speaker, CAG Rengarajan. CAG Rengarajan is a chartered accountant and a professional having more than 13 years of experience in finance, accounts, auditing, and taxation. He deftly handles clients from various sectors, including banks, financial institutions, agriculture, software, logistics, textile, paper, defense, telecom, hospitals, hotels, and many more. He is presently a partner of a very leading firm of chartered accountants, and he has been associated with this firm for more than 18 years now. He started, of course, there as an audit assistant, and he has continued over there, being elevated to the partner stage in 2010. He is the partner authorizing financial statements in Indian GAAP, Ind AS of corporate groups having turnover of more than 2,500 crores. And in fact, he also handles domestic tax matters, indirect taxes, and appeals also. His extensive experience in undertaking audits, studying clients' business, planning internal financial controls has led him to be a very, very popular speaker across various professional forums. In fact, he regularly speaks on topics such as Companies Act 2013, international taxation, income tax, and FEMA at various chapters of ICAI. He is also a co-opted member in the Auditing and Assurance Standards Committee. And of course, as we were discussing, he's a good friend of my father's also, and they've had multiple interactions, as he was telling me. So it's a great pleasure and privilege for me, sir, for me to have this opportunity to introduce you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us today. We're looking for an excellent session. Over to you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much.
You can share your screen and start Rangarajan, sir.
Yeah, sure. So, hope my screen is visible right now. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can put the full show from the first screen.
Yes, please.
You can take to the first slide first.
No, I'm just trying to reduce the screen size of it.
No, once you put F5, it will automatically fit in the screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's very good evening to one and all present here. Chairman, Secretary, it's a pleasure to talk at ICAI. Even though this is my first experience at Chennai for SARC, I've been, as I told you, I've been speaking across Kerala, and that experience is giving us an opportunity to go online these days. Online experience is a different challenge altogether. I was just telling Chairman and Secretary how online experience is a challenge, because my first few experience, first webinar when I took, the screen was kept moving from one place to another, so I was finding it difficult to link myself to the screen and then talk to those lines. So with that things online, I thank the chairman and the secretary for giving me this opportunity. Let's straight away go into the topic for the day, which is predominantly about webinars, which is predominantly technical changes in audits.
Need to share the screen again, Rangarajan. We lost the screen.
Okay. Is it okay now?
No, we haven't got 1 second. You'll have to click the tab. Yeah, now it has come back. Yes, it has come. You just move the next screen and see if it's working fine.
Yes. I just hide my webcam. What happens? I just go.
Just take to the next screen and just see. Yeah,
but
yeah.
Okay. So what's there for today's discussion is how things have changed today. When chairman called me for the discussion about this topic, he said we want something about MCA corporate affairs also coming in, some changes or the major changes that we can do, a technology advancement in audits in terms of companies. So that is also as a part of discussion today, with linked to COVID related activities, COVID related reliefs and other things. And towards the later part of my discussion, I would be talking about some techniques which we will be forced to take up in certain scenarios like this. We look at certain data analytics techniques that has been available, present to us. I'll share you some of the ideas which we have been using. And I'll also be explaining about certain Excel tools which we will be definitely needing at these times. So with this as the idea behind our presentation for the day, let's go straight away into the topic. So we are going to discuss on certain forms. I think all of us are technically aware of various forms which has to be filed for ROC purposes. I have been attending the last two sessions, so I know how much of an detailed presentation Chaitanya, Chaitanya or STS Rajiv had taken across. They have been going, in fact, if you look at Chaitanya's sessions, he went screenshot by screenshot, understanding each column of income tax, what you have to do, clicking on what, how you have to go about and all. So I have not got such kind of a presentation here. Because I thought, okay, Companies Act or ROC filings are more or less stabilized these days. So we'll just look at some of the important forms which we have to file in. I'll be happy to take up questions. So if you have any doubts at any point of time, I think you can just put it on your chat box. We'll be able to take it up towards the end. So what are the basic forms which needs to be filed? I think everyone is aware of AOC 4, XBRL or the non-XBRL version. This is the predominantly the annual return for the companies which goes in. Now in XBRL filing, if you look at the details which is being captured predominantly, is way too detailed in terms of the analysis. Predominantly when we started doing the audits, or when we started filing the forms in the erstwhile ROC regime under 1956 Act, we always used to go with some hard copy documentations. Let it be income tax, let it be ROC. It used to be a bulk of documentation which used to go, and we used to go with to the Tabal session, and they used to just look at the basic requirements and then just put a seal and give back one acknowledgement copy to us. Gone are those days. I'm sure for last 10-12 years, all of us are much equipped with all this online upload informations. ROC also has upgraded. If you look at the data of uploads in the erstwhile 1956 Act, and under 1956 Act itself, we were filing online forms. And once 2013 Act came in, it just elevated the requirements, elevated the level of documentation, elevated the requirements of submission of forms. So in those terms, the annual return form which was there erstwhile to what it's there now is a significant form. It has substantial amount of information which is captured inside. Both the XBRL and the non-XBRL version captures in detail fragmentation of all the parts of our financial statements, what we are signing under Schedule 3 these days. So that, along with MGT 7, which is the annual filed form, annual return form, all these are generally filed after the AGM. AOC is 30 days from the AGM. Irrespective of what happens, there generally seems to be an extension which coming in. So we are all happy that every year someday or the other extension seeps in for all these forms. All these forms go together predominantly, MGT 7, MGT 15. We try to file it in one shot so that all things are taken care with, all the requirements are met in one single shot. So not much of difficulty in these forms. The other forms which we generally file on an annual basis, if cost audit is applicable, we have two general forms which goes in the cost audit CRA 2 and CRA 4. Again, these are forms which have gone with tremendous amount of changes in the last few years, but effectively in the last couple of years, not much of changes have come in. Once an entity is liable for a cost audit, we file CAR2, which is going in. Then CAR4 is his full-fledged audit report with the reconciliation of the cost sheets to the financial results. So that goes in. Then we are all aware of CHG1, which is about the charge form. Significant changes had come in Companies Amendment Act 2019. Substantial changes is proposed in CAB 2020. So please go through that basic stuff, which is nothing but basic changes, meaning to say predominantly your fines and penalties are getting changed. Your imprisonment as in penalty is getting reduced drastically. So these are the predominant changes which is coming in. And other main area which they have concentrated on is reduction on penalty for non-filing and other areas. So CHG1 is one such form which was giving a lot of difficulty for many people, since there used to be a substantial delay in filing the charge creation. So now that is being looked at, and they have given you some options to file. If you read the section right now, it says prior to Companies Amendment Act 2019, what is the structure has to be looked into. Post Companies Amendment Act 2019, what is the structure? That's how the section itself has been worded these days. So with that, some changes. The forms itself is refined. There's not much of a difficulty in filing these forms. I'm sure all of you are aware that it has to be filed, and the bank manager of the bank also has to acknowledge and then take it through. The other forms which have taken up of late, which has been talked about more, is DAR3, KYC norms for directors. And for last 2 years, the year before was the first year when DAR3 came into picture. How difficult we faced to ensure that the director number had to be, director mobile number and email ID has to be linked, and if it's a foreign director, then we have to give that number, that link. So many different difficulties were faced last year, but subsequently it's much easier right now. DAR3 is very simple. If there's no change, you just need to file a no change form. If there is a change, then you have to go through the whole process again. Again, not much of a difficulty stuff right now. I'm sure everyone is aware of MGT 14 also. I'm not concentrating mostly on these forms because these forms have been in role for last few years, and not much of changed as such. So my presentation predominantly caters to the latest needs on technological changes. Just since we are talking about company or talking about these presentations, these forms initially, just to get the feel of what are all the technological changes in these forms also. The other forms which have taken a significant impact in the last few years is BEN2, MSME, and DPT3. I'm sure all of us had struggled with DPT3 last time. MSME, whether to file, not to file, that confusion still exists in many entities. MSME form is required to be filed if there is a delay in paying the dues to MSME creditors beyond 45 days. This is very seriously looked into when Schedule 3 incorporated, or when it was not new to us in the old schedule under 1956 Act, when we were moving in itself. A lot of significance was being placed on MSME creditors, and the requirement to present the dues to MSME, the interest, the principal dues to MSME, all things had been significantly been looked into from the erstwhile 1956 Act. Coming into 2013 Act, Schedule 3 incorporated predominantly the same versions of it. Once that has been adopted, we were only looking for an elevation from there on, and the MSME was such an elevation. MSME 1 was such an elevation. Now, the data which is getting captured under MSME is way too significant. Please, as auditors, please look at this form very, very strictly. The data which is mentioned in MSME form, this is a form which is filed half yearly. One which is filed before October, the other which is filed before 30th of April. This form caters to the need of the requirement of the government, stating that they are tracking every single payment which is going as a belated payment to MSME. It's not only linked here. Obviously, we are all aware of the interest provision which the MSME Act of 2006 wants us to do, and the corresponding impact on Income Tax Act, where they say this interest has to get disallowed. So all this are actually interlinked in a beautiful way. People inadvertently, without understanding the seriousness of this issue, just filed the MSME form 1 initially, saying that this was needed to be filed. Everyone was asking for it, so we just filed this form to avoid the interest and penalty kind of structures. But once an information goes into this form, then very evidently, as auditors, we are forced to go into a detailed disclosure in Schedule 3 for the payment of principal and for the payment of interest. So that becomes a very, very crucial area. DPT3 also, the form, we were all filing one-time form last year. One single one-time form was there, plus an yearly form is also there. Please look into those forms. We have to file these forms. 30th June is actually the due date for DPT3 and other structures, so we look at it. All these forms have some correlation or the other. When we file and financial information through annual reports, your AOC 4, let it be AOC 4, or let it be a CAR 4, or let it be your CHG 4 or 1, which is regarding the charge creation. All these information has to be synchronized. There are analytical procedures which each and every department is doing these days for capturing such information. To have an insight on this, I was talking to one of the commissioners in Kerala, Commissioner of Income Tax in Kerala. He was when we were having a general discussion, he was asking about the annual return forms which was getting filed under GST. He was asking about the tedious return forms and all. So with the curiosity, I asked him, sir, how are you? Why are you even bothered of so much kind of information? And the annual returns of GST, how is it even looked into? Are you looking at the turnover reconciliation and other stuff? So he was saying, more and that is not the way at all. We are much looking for much more information than that. We are, in their annual return, this was prior to when the exemptions under GSTR 1 and this thing of GSTR 9 was introduced. So he was saying that, there's a column called HSN summary. The HSN and SAC summary. It's not only for outputs and inputs, both we are trying to capture it. So I said, yes, sir. So what's the big challenge in it? So he said, yeah. So once you start filling the SAC summary, it becomes my work becomes much more easier, because the data which you give as SAC summary means that there's a service. So I just need to take that dump from your GSTR 9, and with that information, I would be able to just GSTR. I will have the GST number of the person also there. So I will take the PAN of that person. I will know whether you have deducted tax for that person. I will ask the 26Q, 24Q details and 26Q, 27Q details. Just check whether all the 26Q data is pairing with your HSN summary, or if there's anything extra in your HSN summary for which tax has not been deducted. So things are not as we think. Like, we just don't think as a single form and it has just one implication. I'm filing an ROC form and just go to ROC purposes. Gone are those days when the information is not getting shared and all. It is being cross shared. All people are having comfortable information at the government level. So if you file an MSME form, very simply the data gets captured for not only for interest and provision disallowance for information for Schedule 3 purposes. It also gets captured for income tax purpose and the disallowance thereon. So there are too much of a data information which is being fed into the government portal. Okay, so we'll talk about this more when I talk about data analytics and how things are being used. So these are the forms which are generally annual forms which needs to be filed regularly. So we go into, I'm just picking up 3 of the COVID related exemptions which is being given. One exemption is the first thing, there's no late file fees for any forms which is getting filed from 1st of April to 30th of September. So again, when I was talking about this in another seminar, one of the participants raised a question saying that, is it applicable to all forms that has to be filed for the financial year 1920? The answer is technically no. I don't think it has been formulated that way. If your due dates are falling somewhere between your March, April, May kind of structures, then yes, there is an exemption which is given, blanket exemption which is given. You can file the form till 30th of September without having a late fee. But if your forms are likely to be filed for before the lockdown actually started, then I don't think this exemption actually comes into picture. So that's why I pick up this particular exemption notification, which is relevant to us, because I've been talking about these various forms. The next 2 exemptions which has been mentioned in this particular scheme of exemption which was given. First thing is the board meetings. Generally, there is a time gap of 120 days between the 2 board meetings, irrespective of whether it's a private limited company, a public limited company, or a listed company, whatever be the structure. There was a time gap of 120 days within which we should conduct 1 board meeting. Now they have extended this by another 60 days. So we have technically another 180 days to conduct a board meeting. That means to say the gap between one board meeting and the next board meeting right now could go to a maximum of 180 days is what it presently looks like. So, and they have said it is up to 30th of September. So what we very clearly foresaw was that the first quarter and the second quarter meetings, definitely they're not expecting you to have that 120-day time gap. They are giving you a benefit of 180 days to file the have a effective board meeting. So initially when this was proposed, it was in the first lockdown season this was introduced. So we were saying, okay, anyway, it's only 21 days or the first lockdown of 14 days. So effectively after that things should regularize. So why are we even looking at 30th September as an option? And once lockdown 2, lockdown 3, lockdown 4 and all started coming up, then we now seriously look into, yes, we know the significance of this. And they have already introduced something called as video conferencing through, I mean, board meeting through video conferencing and all. So very evidently, we could see, yes, they have had a plan to come into picture, and that's why these exemptions are seeping in place. One more exemption which was given due to COVID reasons is that there is a mandatory independent auditor, independent directors meeting which has to be conducted. One meeting at least had to be conducted during the year. So generally, many listed entities, wherever we either represent as an internal auditor, as a statutory or as a statutory auditor, they ensure that the meeting is at towards the year end. And one important purpose for this pushing it to the year end is that one of the criteria for the independent auditors meeting, independent directors meeting, is that the independent directors have to interact with the statutory auditors, interact with the internal auditors, see what are the gaps that they identified or gaps that they noticed during the course of their audit. It could be during the limited reviews, it could be during their final audit which has started, it could be any audits which has been happening during the year, and that is being taken up seriously and it's been escalated to the next level. So that being the case, most of the companies preferred it to have it towards the end of the year by March. And since we were locked down from mid of March, this exemption has a very significant impact. They said even if there is no independent directors meeting, it will not be considered as a violation for this particular year. So that's how it has been discussed. So with this basic brief on what are all the some basic forms which has to be filed and for COVID related exemptions, I'm going into two important areas of discussion. One is conducting of board meeting through video conferencing, and the other, the new amendment or the new notification which came in for conducting AGMs through video conferencing. Why I picked these two as very important discussion for current year is that it's not for March 2020 board meetings that is going to be looked into. The year ended 31st March 2021, that is the current financial year, we must have 4 meetings. And those 4 meetings, with the way things are looking at, the way things are going, the numbers of COVIDs are going in India at present, I don't think physical movement will anyway be happening in the next 5 to 6 months. So if that being the structure, definitely one board meeting at least has to be through video conferencing. So in this exemption which has been mentioned in the as a COVID relief as 180 days, technically means till September. So at least in September we should have had one board meeting, and that board meeting in many scenarios would be a video conferencing meeting. So for many bigger organizations and like listed companies and all, video conferencing might be something which they have been used to. But for many public limited companies, private limited companies and all, this may not have happened so far, and hence this video conferencing board meeting might be their first meeting, and we must be very, very clear on how technology has to be used in this particular board meeting. Going further, the AGM, I'm sure most of us will have the experience of first time video conferencing AGM this time. Whenever I had an opportunity for chairmen coming across to Kerala for their AGM, because they have to be physically present, they always say, at least for the AGM purposes, we are coming down here for the board meeting purpose. For the AGM purposes, we are getting to see our offices here. Otherwise, we sit there. We have the board meetings through video conferencing comfortably. We don't come to the office here other than for the AGM purposes. Now that also will be breached. We will be having first time video conferencing AGMs. So I have split my session into two parts, around 5-6 slides on video conferencing for board meetings, and the next few parts for AGM meetings. So going into this thing, so these are the topics which I'm discussing in detail today. Meetings to be conducted through video conferencing. Meetings means board meetings is what I'm talking about. Next is EGMs and AGMs. I'm not talking more on EGMs. I'm talking predominantly on AGMs. That has to be conducted through video conferencing or other audio video means. Yeah, so that's what is OAVMs. So we'll go into the topic right away. So if you are conducting a board meeting through video conferencing, certain precautions, certain necessities has to be taken. The first, the rules under Companies Act 2014, the Management Board Rules 2014, very clearly prescribes the methods on how to go about. So I'm not talking about in detail what the rule says. I'm just pulling out certain factors which we must be very, very clear about. It must be there. Without this, the board meeting will not be considered as an active, or it will not be considered as a full-fledged board meeting. So in those lines, the first topic that we need to look at is that the notice must very specifically state there is a video conferencing methodology used in this particular board meeting. If this is not mentioned in the notice, then the notice will not be considered as a valid notice for the purpose of video conferencing. So for people who are using it for the first time, please ensure that the notice very specifically states this, that there be a video conferencing facility which is available, and people will be coming online for the purpose of video conferencing. The next important thing that we have to take care is the company should make all necessary arrangements to avoid any audio or video failure. One classic example was yesterday's session when the speaker Rajiv was talking about, and all of a sudden he had his computer had a issue and he couldn't come online. Such issues are possible through video conferencing meetings also. Technology has its benefits as well as has its lapses. The lapses is such kind of issues wherein you might not, the internet connection might just go off, or power might just go off, your system might just crash out. All these are some things we should be very clear about. If such things are there, like the chairman stepped in yesterday for Rajiv, started presenting the slides, and Rajiv came through his phone and was presenting his slides. We must have backup plans. Backup plan A, backup plan B is needed. In fact, when I was talking to chairman before the session, he was saying he actually logs in through the computer as well as another device, so that he knows how things go about. If there is any difficulty in the other device, he will immediately pop up in the screen, and then he will try to take control over it. So those kind of measures are the need of the hour. We must be looking at these backup plans that should be taken care. The next thing that the rules specify is that we should take care, the safeguard the integrity of the meeting, ensure sufficient security and identification methods are taken care. Why this is predominantly, and I can talk about with the experiences with the video conferencing meetings I've attended. Predominantly, I've attended video conferencing meeting for many listed entities. So being listed entities, their information is very, very sensitive. It cannot be let out. They cannot discuss it other than it's been officially issued to SEBI and other places. So with such sensitive information available, integrity of the data, the security of the data becomes very, very essential. We have to ensure that there is no way these data are leaked to anyone. Similarly, if you're having a video conferencing meeting for a private limited company now, being a private limited company means very closely held. And in our first video conferencing meeting for one small private limited company here, the director was joining us from Australia. So when he was joining from Australia, he was very, very specific on it. He said, the shareholders, even though there are only few other people other than us, then let us first discuss on the numbers. Let us first look at the data which is being there. Let the auditor tell his facts and tell us very clearly whether he is satisfied with the accounts, whether is there any improvements that he wants to take it up with. Once we are satisfied and the auditor is satisfied, then let's put it up to the shareholders. So that's how he was discussing with those meetings. So very, very clearly, the data which is getting discussed in board meetings are very, very sensitive information. And definitely we as people who are representing either as auditors or when directors are coming in, we must be very, very clear that these security measures are taken up. Primary requirement of all these video conferencing stuffs is that it gets recorded. Even our meeting today is getting recorded. Okay, so we have to be very, very clear on what we are talking, how we are talking, because in many a times I had this difficulty before when we as an internal auditor were presenting to the statutory auditors and the board our points which we have identified during the period. The statutory auditor very, very clearly puts it across, and I really appreciated his efforts there. He very, very clearly put across every point I say as the issues which we felt or the issues which we came across, which we are escalating to the board level. He immediately pops up and says, yes, this is the issue that they have looked at. We have discussed just before the meeting or a day before the meeting. He had observed all this. We have looked into these issues. How we mitigated the points he has mentioned is by so and so methods. So that's how he put it across. So why he was doing that is very, very clearly because he as a statutory auditor has to take cognizance of what I as an internal auditor have presented to him. So these kind of things gets recorded. If he is silent in those scenarios, then it would look as though the statutory auditor has not acted upon the points which we as an internal auditor have presented. So that being the case, since recording happens, many information has to be communicated very, very clearly. You have to step up and say, yes, this is what has happened, this is why it's happening, and once this is there, it has to go into the record that way. Unlike the erstwhile board meetings where we could just write down saying that so and so proposed, so and so seconded, and all those kind of structures. Being a recorded meeting, a proposer and a seconder has to be vocal, and it has to get recorded. Okay, and this is one of the very, very important things that has to be looked into. So again, when we're talking about recording, people were facing this difficulty that we had to go to Zoom or any other bigger software, and they were charging for all these recordings which is happening and all. Now during this corona times, I think Gmail itself through this Google Meets and other things, we are able to record all these meetings. So I think you can straight away, if you are not looking at a bigger packaged plan or a software, I think there are softwares these days which can record information like Google Meet, which can be very, very cost effective. The thing that we need to take care, the next thing that we need to take care with the video conferencing board meeting is that the chairman of a meeting and the directors should ensure that no one else attends that meeting. Okay, if they are sitting in a different location, then they must ensure that no one else is with them other than the director himself. In certain scenarios, the director may not be able to handle the video conferencing methodology which has been put across. So in that scenario, he has to specifically mention saying that during the beginning of the meeting, so and so was with me to help me in this activity, and no one is there when the actual board meeting is going on. So these are very, very vocal things that has to happen in a board meeting these days. So the chairman of the board meeting has to ensure that there is quorum and the people are present and are able to hear throughout the meeting. So that is something which has to very, very carefully managed. Every time the chairman has to check whether the other directors are able to hear, are able to see what is getting presented. If there's any difficulty, then he may have to revisit the whole thing which has happened so far. If they have said that no, agenda number 3 are not able to hear clearly, we have already gone halfway through to agenda number 3. then we have to again restart agenda 3, ensure all the information is actually passed on correctly. One role check which actually happens in every board meeting these days is the chairman ensures that all the directors who are physically present through video conferencing has to tell his or her name, the location where they are at, and they have got the notice and they are very clear about the agenda, and mention that there is no one else along with them other than no one else along with them in that particular room. Okay, this is a mandatory requirement which is being emphasized by the rules. Okay, and this has to get recorded, and that's why I said both the documentation or the recording happens, and so vocal is the more appropriate way to handle the scenario. Like in one of the meetings with the Prime Minister came up and then said, let's go vocal for local. I think in all board meetings these days through video conferencing, everyone is being very, very vocal. The vocal being to say they have to be very clear on their voice. They have to say, I have to interrupt here. I'm not able to understand the scenario. Or in these confirmations, what we are taking, saying that they have got the agenda, they have gone through the agenda in full. There is no relevant papers which is not circulated to them. These kind of confirmations are taken as a oral confirmation, and all these oral confirmations are getting recorded. Okay, so that becomes a core criteria for us for the discussion. The next thing that we have to take care in terms of board meetings is that quorum, as I have already told, quorum must be present. It can be through video conferencing also. One person can sit in Cochin, one person can sit in Chennai and still have a board meeting. It's still possible. But the challenge is throughout the meeting, we must ensure that there's quorum. There's a possibility of disruption of technology. If there's a disruption of technology, the meeting has to be put on hold. Ensure that the other person is online, comes back to online, and then restart the meeting. So these are some technical glitches which we may be facing. In one of the earlier board meetings through video conferencing, the audit committee chairman just went off, and we were going on with the meeting for almost 10-15 minutes, and all of a sudden we realized that there is no response from the audit committee chairman. And then when we started communicating back to him through the video conferencing methodologies, there was no response. Then he called up and he said, hey, yeah, I was off for 15 minutes. I've been trying to connect. What happened? So then we had to go back for 15 minutes, reschedule all the whole thing for 15 minutes, start discussing again. So that is need. So every time nowadays, what happens is every agenda when it's being read, the people who are across the video conferencing are verified whether they have been they have heard what has been spoken so far, whether the screens which has been shared has been visible to them, whether they are aware, acknowledged the whole activity which has happened. So other things which we have to look into is that the meeting, the venue which is being mentioned in the notice is considered as the meeting place. So to ensure this happening, we ensure that one company secretary or one person sits at the or one key managerial personnel sits at the register office, so that we can record as though the register office is the place where the meeting is happening, and so that the records need not move along. So these are certain things that we have to look at. If you are keeping the signatures at the registered office, then we have to take the cognizance of all the directors who are appearing through video conferencing methodologies, and ensure that this is their it's being designed as they have been physically present and signing that particular documentation. So every participant, whenever he is communicating across, he must mention this name, the DIN. We generally insist on the DIN also being mentioned at least once during the whole time of the board meeting, because that also very clearly or evidently records that so and so data is there. Again, this point, again, I would like to stress upon saying that if at all there is any disruption, we must ensure that the disruption is rectified. The board meeting then will be kept at hold. The board meeting will resume only when the technical glitch is sorted out. Okay, so these kind of difficulties will be there, but please ensure that these things are happening. Why I'm saying about all this is because it's getting recorded. So just because someone goes off, we cannot say, okay, he's not there, let's continue the meeting, finish it off. No, the meeting is getting recorded. If he's going off, then that is also getting recorded. So we cannot continue it that way. So there should be a person who keeps tracking on with the number of people who is attending the meeting, number of people who went off, what is the reason of going off. All this needs to be looked into. Again, the emphasis is being made on that no other person other than the chairman, director, company secretary should be available at that meeting. That is very, very essential for these kind of video conferencing meetings. At the end of these video conferencing meetings, the chairman has to ensure that all the agenda is read and the other people who are appearing through video conferencing have either acknowledged it, have voted for or voted against the particular agenda. Has to be again a quick recap has to be taken, and that also gets recorded. So if there are 5 agendas, individually he has to read the agenda. He has to say that as per the data which we have gone through right now, out of the 5 directors, 4 have given, 4 have are in favor of this resolution, whereas 1 who is so and so is against this resolution. These kind of data also gets looked into. Once the board meeting, video conferencing meeting is over, generally the data is sent back, the minutes is sent back within 15 days. These days, again, it's sent through emails, electronic notes predominantly. Once that is gone to the various directors, they acknowledge that, acknowledge the draft which has been circulated, and within 7 days or any reasonable time which has been given, it's been sent for approval to the chairman. So predominantly within a week's time these days, the minutes are circulated. Once it is circulated, individual acknowledgement of that fact that they have received the mail and they have gone through the minutes, they have no additions or they are okay with the minutes, is getting recorded through email. That also becomes a mandatory requirement. Since many of board meetings will be under video conferencing from 1st April to 30th of September, I request all the members, I'm sure all of them will come only to the auditors for assistance. I think we should be very, very clear on how to guide them. Otherwise, the video conferencing meeting may not be considered as an actual meeting. So again, the last point in terms of video conferencing board meeting is that once all things are done within 30 days, everything should get concluded and the actual things has to be printed and then kept across, or it can be kept as a soft copy. So these are some of the insights when it comes to video conferencing of board meetings. Many of the members may have attended this. I may have been repeating something which is very, very fundamental for them. But to look at the picture as a whole, I'm just presenting across so that everyone gets an idea as to how to handle the technology in the present 6 months criteria to conduct board meetings. Now going on to video conferencing of AGMs. All of us will be facing the first AGM video conferencing predominantly now. I don't think many of them have taken an opportunity to have a video conferencing AGM so far. The regulations which has been proposed is very, very elaborate, like they have given for video conferencing board meeting. It is actually split into 2 parts. First part is for people for whom e-voting is applicable, either as a mandatory e-voting or people who have taken e-voting as an option. In that scenario, how to address that particular issues. For people for whom e-voting is not mandatory or who are not taking e-voting as a methodology, for them, how to go about to do an AGM through video conferencing is what has been discussed in the notification. So we'll go through this. So when you are the first few slides of mine is about for companies for whom e-voting is mandatory or e-voting has been taken up. So once e-voting is being done, the fundamental difference between the companies who have taken e-voting and companies for whom e-voting is not applicable in AGM is only the e-voting category. So if you remove the e-voting part out of it, both the companies have to follow a similar procedure. There's not much of a difference in the way the procedure goes. Looking at that, the first thing that everyone has to ensure is that the timelines or the time zones which people will be present. Since if it's a board of directors meeting, it would be maximum of 10 or 5 to 10 directors or maximum of 15 directors in one board meeting and all. So it is very easy to look at the timelines. Many of them may be in some common cities, so one timeline would be common to cross. But in the present scenario where AGM may be conducted, there could be shareholders across India, or we could have shareholders across the world. So if that being the scenario, if majority of the direct shareholders are in different time zones, then the notification very clearly says the convenience of different persons in different time zones has to be kept in mind before scheduling a meeting. So you cannot say, okay, we will conduct a meeting at 9 o'clock, whereas it may be difficult for people to appear at 9 o'clock in the early morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, so not early morning. So we may have to reschedule our time to say somewhere around afternoon, where majority of them may be possible to attend these kind of meetings. When a video conferencing is happening, two-way video conferencing is mandatory. Excuse me. Two-way meaning to say two-way communication of audio and video should be present. This has to be ensured by the person who's organizing it, predominantly the company who's organizing the AGM. They have to ensure that two-way communication is taken care of. The notification also insists that at least 1,000 members must be present or must be able to attend the meeting on a first come first served basis. However, certain people are not considered as first come first served. They are mandatory that they have to attend. Who are these people? Stakeholders who are holding more than 2%, the promoters, chairman of various committees like the remuneration committee or the audit committee or the CSR committee, all those people, they have to attend. Institutional investors, they have to attend the meeting, so they are not given on a FIFO basis, they have to mandatorily attend. All directors, key managerial personnel, they also have to be physically, they have to be present, so they are also not ruled out, saying that the first 1,000 people are already there, so these people are not able to attend. It's not possible. And the last one is us auditors. One predominant thing which Companies Act 2013 made mandatory is that all the general meetings, auditor has to be physically present either by himself or through his representation. The representative also should be a qualified chartered accountant only. This is something which Section 146 emphasizes on, and when I talk about this at various forums, many times I find that the predominant AGM date for most of the private limited companies that that auditors audit is 29th and 30th of September. And it happens, the AGM happens across. I have been interacting with quite a few fellow members in Kerala, and they say, sir, my AGMs are predominantly on 30th, whereas the registered office of the company are in different cities in Kerala. So is it an issue, is what they come up and ask. I says, yes, definitely an issue so far. Since as an auditor, you have to be physically present. If you are not present, at least your representative should be present. If both of you are not present, then you should have taken an approval from the company much ahead of time. Okay, if that is not documented, then this becomes a difficulty. Earlier, because private limited companies used to come towards the end, many times the board meeting date and the AGM date people tend to miss out on. At the end, they find that there is no 21 clear days of notice, so then they are forced to take a shorter notice. These kind of issues come up, so please be careful. Once UDIN also came into picture, I'm sure all of us are following that methodology, having a board meeting, creating a UDIN on that date, and then having an AGM accordingly. Predominantly, most of the private limited companies that we have as audit, many companies fortunately or unfortunately go into the shorter notice scenario. We take the consent of all the shareholders and directors and then have a shorter notice also. So that why we plan that is because of our physical availability. We may not be available on 30th for all of them. So we ensure that we plan and give at least 4 or 5 dates to people. If I'm in a particular city, then I say if I have 3 or 4 clients in that city, I ensure that all of them have the AGM on the same day so that I don't need to keep traveling to that city up and down. So that makes a mandatory requirement. Now under VC, video conferencing, auditors also have a liberty. We can sit at one place and we can appear through video conferencing. It's going to be a revolution for AGM as such. So let's see how it goes about. The next thing that we have to be careful about is that there's a time frame of 15 minutes before and after the meeting. Anyway, the AGM time, starting time is fixed. Ending time is anyway not fixed. Starting time is fixed. So 15 minutes prior to the start time, the video conferencing has to run. I was when Institute called me for my first webinar or for this webinar, I was told that, sir, you have to be there 15 minutes early. Even though the meeting starts at 6, you have to be there at 5:45. We will start. We will have some trial runs going on in the background. So once we are satisfied, then we go live, and at that time there won't be any interruption. So similarly here also, 15 minutes prior to the board AGM, the meeting has to the video conferencing has to be on. People can start getting into the webinar or into the video conferencing mode 15 minutes prior to the meeting. Once the meeting starts, it goes on, and once the meeting closes, again the notification states that we should give another 15 minutes for the closure. Just because just after the meeting also there could be some shareholders who want to meet the CFO or the directors and ask some queries which could not be asked at the time of the AGM. These things could be there. So to that extent, 15 minutes time frame has been given. For companies for which e-voting has already been initiated, then the e-voting procedures has to be followed. Prior to the board meeting, prior to the AGM itself, the e-voting has to be closed. The data, we have to give them 3 days time. We have to give them the user ID password. The agenda has to go. They have to acknowledge the agenda, pass the resolutions. That gets consolidated and it goes to a scrutinizer. The scrutinizer scrutinizes it, keeps it ready. He will open it only at the time of the AGM. He will not be able to verify what's there prior to the AGM or at the time of the AGM. Once the AGM is concluded, he will get the information, and based on that, it will be published on the websites. So all those procedures which has to be followed for e-voting should be followed for this AGM also. There is no difference in that. Attendance through video conferencing will be considered for quorum purposes here, so it becomes much more easier. Many times, if it's a small public limited company where they have their registered office in a different location, they ensure that they call the shareholders and ensure that they attend the AGM, because the quorum becomes a very crucial issue. In video conferencing, that has been breached. If you are attending through video conferencing also, then that will be taken as an taken for the purpose of quorum. Only persons who are appearing through video conferencing or in the physical hall they will be allowed to vote if they have not voted in e-voting methodology. Okay, even now, many a times people don't take the e-voting option. They come to the AGM, ask for a poll. Based on that, we give the ballot box and the papers. They still go and then pass normal voting system. If such things are there, that should also be allowed under video conferencing, is what they have said. Probably how would it happen? Maybe through a show of hands or something. Or they can also initiate a process of reinitiating the email to going back to them, ensuring that they are voting online. Something has to be taken up right now, and that information also has to be captured in a very secretive way to ensure that the vote is not leaked out. So that also has to be ensured. The next thing that we have to look into is, since there is no need of physical presence, probably proxies may not be present in this AGM, since people can appear through mobile or through video conferencing methodologies. They need not send a proxy or with a proxy form to the main forum. So that also would slowly disappear, is what the notification also feels. Then they say appointment of a chairman. If section 109, wherever there's a requirement there, 109, 104 to be looked into, those procedures has to be satisfied. If the article specifies so and so will be the chairman, that person continues. Otherwise, if they want to select a chairman out of the people who are physically present, that also is possible. Again, when we are talking about the methodology of conducting the AGM, it is always mentioned that the auditor and the one independent director must be physically present. There is no exclusion that for the purpose of video conferencing. Through VC methods also, they must ensure at least one independent director, the audit committee chairman, and the directors who are there should be present, and the auditor also should be physically present. Now they can be present through video conferencing or any other audio video kind of methodologies. Okay, the company, it's also insisted that the company provides a complete helpline system, so that if people are not able to log in through helpline, they can try to get themselves rectified. So that also is to be provided. So these are some of the informations which we have to keep in mind. Once the resolutions are passed, within 60 days, the resolutions passed in accordance with this mechanism has to be filed with ROC. Then the notice of the AGM, which shall also contain very clearly that it is going to be a VC and how to access this particular meeting. Okay, if at all there are any ordinary or special businesses, ordinary businesses can go through without much of an issue. If there are special businesses which are unavoidable, then only it can be taken up here, because since we know that physical presence is not there, it may be difficult for voting and other methodologies. So they have said, as much as possible, try to avoid special resolution cases. Ordinary resolution cases you can go through. Anyway, if it's e-voting and majority of them are going through e-voting, not much of issues will be there from our end to conduct these kind of video conferencing meeting. So since we are conducting the AGM through PC, the annual reports, I think it's been a couple of years or so since many companies have gone into an as a resolution, it's as a policy of them itself. They have taken up saying that they will not print the annual reports anymore. They will only send the soft copy. So they take acknowledgement of this from the shareholders much ahead of time, saying that we will be sending only soft copies. If there is any difficulty, please inform us much ahead of time, so that we can, if at all we need, we can do some alternate arrangements for sending you that data. So now annual reports predominantly go through emails. It is not sent hard copies, or no more sent. I don't think in the present scenario we can send hard copies also. It's advisable to send also. Then public notice in that newspaper, which is the general procedure, one English, one vernacular newspaper which is to be given, that has to continue. There's no change to that requirements. The notice also, or the notification also emphasizes that if the shareholders are having difficulty in getting the dividend through online methodologies of NIFT and RTGS and other methodologies, they said you must dispatch the dividend warrants at the earliest. So this also is something which is to be done after the board meeting, after the AGM. So all this is to be kept in mind when we are conducting a meeting through video conferencing. So I hope I have been clear for companies for whom e-voting is mandatory, how to conduct an AGM through VC. Now going into entities for whom e-voting is not mandatory. As I told you, the difference between the first set of companies, and second set of companies is only e-voting. So they have only added some additional methodologies for distribution of the agenda ahead, some ensuring that the voting happens in a secretive manner. Other than that, all other things have to be followed. One important thing which they have emphasized is this particular point, which is put up in the slide. They have said that majority of the people should be who are eligible to vote should be attending the meeting. So we must ensure that that happens. If it's a Nidhi company, they say if, for people who are having more than 1,000 rupees face value shares, they must ensure that they are at least attend fully. Other than those, all other entities for companies who are having share capital or who are not having share capital, they should have at least 75% of the people who are eligible to vote should be present. You should ensure that at least those people are present through VC for the AGM. So again, reinstating that all the points has to be followed here also. There's no change in that procedures other than the e-voting methodology. As I told you, e-voting is already prominent and it's been done for last 2 years or so right now. For these companies who don't have e-voting methodology or who are not mandated to have an e-voting methodology, they now have to follow a particular method. They have to take the complete data of all the shareholders, data in the sense their email IDs has to be collected. They have to send a confirmation mail. They have to send a user ID password. The agenda has to go in. Through this user ID and password, they have to vote, and that voting will again be captured, and it has to come back to the person who is proposing the meeting. That is the chairman or the company secretary who is doing the activity. It has to come back. They have to scrutinize this data after the AGM, and that will be presented across. So they have to ensure that the confidentiality and in terms of passwords, in terms of the data which is getting circulated, is only going to the designated emails. It is not going to any email ID. We must doubly confirm that there are no other person's email ID to whom this goes. I'm sorry. That is something which has to be very carefully looked into. If it's a small private limited company with around say 50-60 shareholders, then this again will become very significant. Obviously, many private limited companies or public limited companies will be operating at the minimal level. So if that being the case, if you're not looking at video conferencing, then it's okay, it's not a problem. But otherwise, if the challenge is the auditor also should be present. Sometimes there may be a difficulty in auditor commuting to the place of the AGM. Then in such case, you must insist that there should be a video conferencing meeting. If that is there, then it gets automatically recorded. So please ensure that all these kind of informations are taken care. This is how the notification further states. It says that if there are less than 50 members present in the meeting, the chairman may decide how to conduct the meeting. Either even if he wants to go by a poll, by show of hands and other things, that can also happen, is what the notification says. If a counting is required, then the AGM has to be kept on hold. It will be counted, it will be adjourned to a later point, and then the results will be taken out. So that is how they have coordinated the whole procedure for AGM through video conferencing. So things that we have to ensure is that the directors or the chairmen of the board meeting of the AGM should ensure that all the people who are shareholders, their registered email ID is available and communication is going only to them. We may also need to do a follow-up, check whether they have received it, whether they will be attending the meeting. All those kind of information and documentation may need to be looked into. So if there is any doubts, I'll be able to take up on these areas right now. So I'm going into our later second part of our discussion, audits under Corona times, BC versus AC, audit BC versus audit AC, audit before Corona, audit after Corona. I think audit from home is the new normal right now. Yesterday we had an session webinar organized by the Ernakulam chapter, where the immediate past chairman Joman K. George sir was presenting. So he was saying, I think audits are no more going to be the usual routine. We are going to have audit from home only predominantly, or audit from anywhere. Our present chairman DC sir was saying that it's not audit from home, sir, it's audit from anywhere. We are A from AFA and not AFH, because that much is the requirement these days. So we may have to take up certain essential requirements to ensure that we are able to complete the audit. Fortunately for us, we could close down a couple of audits through online mode just prior to this month beginning. By 31st of May, we could complete a couple of stuffs. June, we just completed one audit through through online methods. It's not only bigger companies, but also smaller entities have started looking at this as an option now. When we stepped into one of our clients who is having pan-India presence as an internal auditor, the first year when we went across to different locations for audit and other things, we found out that our audit, our expenses of travel and stay itself was a substantial value. So as a suggestion in our first report, we had said that why don't you look at investing in a cloud-based package, because their package was already very their ERP was very strong. And we said, why don't you look at elevating your package by which the data gets captured, so that both as a CFO or the accounts team or the senior accounts team which is sitting at the corporate office here, as well as auditors like the stat audit and the internal auditors, need not travel to all the locations. Only when it's needed we can travel, or only to certain key locations we can travel. They took it up so seriously, and last year we cut down our travel by almost 25%, and this year we cut down to only one major location. And that person, the CFO and the senior accounts manager, called up once the lockdown came in. He called up and said, Ranga, don't worry. I think the first audit you can take it up is our internal audit, because everything is available on the cloud. I don't think there'll be any difficulty. Each accountant is having his own. We have given the laptops to them, and they have access to our cloud. Any doubts you have, they'll be able to clarify. So we should complete our audit before the lockdown gets over. He was talking when lockdown 1 was happening, and we could, we could sit and complete majority of our work. I won't say that we completed in lockdown 1 period. We completed in lockdown 2 period, but yes, we have closed down the internal audit of that. It's a private limited company for all certain matters. They have we could close down their audit without stepping out of our homes. Okay, it was very, very effective. For that, certain things that we need to look at is what I have mentioned in this. We may have to set up a small office room in our homes itself. Why? Because we can get some dedicated time. I know the challenges everyone face at home, the family, the kids, the other responsibilities that come up because of COVID situations. Since all this are there, I think it is very clear we should have our dedicated time for office as well as personal time. One very appreciative fact which Jomon sir always insists. Whenever I have interacted with Jomon sir and I say, sir, at times it becomes the timeline of our audit just becomes beyond the stipulated office hours. We are forced to probably sit back late on some days and work. He said, no, Ranga, that's wrong. What you're doing is not right for your health as well as your family. You must ensure that you complete your audit within the office time. And he has very effectively put a plan, and I think his office times closes by around 6 in the evening. The lights go off. They have a light off policy. He says there's a light off policy at 6 o'clock in the evening, unless and otherwise the article assistants who are staying back to complete the last minute assignments. There's a light off policy at 6 o'clock. That's what he always says, and I think it's a very good policy. And presently in our Corona times, I think we should start having some designated time for office, designated time for home. Because staying at home, it looks as though 24 hours we are with the laptop. So we should ensure that that thing is there. We should act professionally. Why? Because not that we are not acting professionally otherwise. Corona times has ensured that we may have to look at certain things in a more detailed manner. Chairman before the meeting was just saying that, or just after the meeting commenced, he said, irrespective of how the situation is going to be, our professional skepticism or the way we look at stuffs will never undergo a change. I think that is more appropriate in these scenarios. We may not be able to visit the client. We may not be having physical documentation anymore. We may have to rely on certain soft copies. We may have to use some data analytical techniques to satisfy ourselves. If those kind of things are done, then I think we'll be able to ensure that our audits are completed much more comfortably. One thing which most of my clients, when I started audit right now under work from home option, was they said we wanted some confidentiality from your end, saying that now people are sitting in different locations and the data is getting shared. We want to ensure that our information is not leaked to anyone. So I think that is something that we have to very clearly ensure. Confidentiality, anyway, we were doing it as a standard of auditing practices itself. But now, since the data is everything online and it's getting communicated through mails and other methodologies right now, I think we should be very clear on the confidentiality procedures. One effective thing that we learned in the last 2.5 months of our audit online is that we have to be very clear on our planning and our communication, because otherwise the art assistants who are sitting in a different city, or the audit manager sitting in a different city, they are not on the same page. When we tell something, when communication happens to one person, it doesn't seep to the next level. At least when they are physically present in an office room, then we can communicate, and he immediately communicates to other people. So it is easier to communicate otherwise. But now under Corona times, or going forward from AFH times, we may have to have a very clear-cut communication and plan. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. One thing which I also learned is that we have to acknowledge that not only we are working from home and we are having difficulties, even the client is also having the same difficulty. So challenging practices are there, changing practices, challenging times. Let's take it up. Let's take up this challenge, especially for clients who are away from in different locations. Inter-district, interstate travel may definitely not be possible. We may get some extension of times going forward, but how far that will help us, how far we can crash ourselves into doing everything in one short span of time may be very, very difficult in the present scenario. So let's start up audits upfront. It is not going to be difficult. We just need to ensure that we are safer in a particular methodology of doing audits. Challenges that we faced from clients in the initial phase was data is at office, they are not able to go to office. So unable to communicate to my staffs so that they can come back and take the audit, or the documentation is not in soft copy. These are the primary replies that we got from our clients. I acknowledge that many of them did not have an cloud-based package. We had a couple of clients who were having in their own ERP, which is not such strong internet-based packages. So we ensured that they once there was some relaxation which happened, they could go and get us some dump from the company, from the data dump from the company, which was possible. We didn't force them to say that no, you have to go and get it. They said once the lockdown is over, we could ease out, or the person who's closest to office, he could go get some data done. So those kind of, we started getting the data in soft copy and started accessing. Many of them who are using Tally started sharing Tally backups. Now obviously online Tally is anyway there, audit tools in Tally is anyway there. We can do an audit, just that client system should also be on. Our system also should be on for accessing the information. If these kind of things are there, I think we can overcome these challenges very, very easily. More than the challenges faced from the client's point, I faced a lot of challenges from my own staffs. The challenge was lack of staffs. Why lack of staff? Because I am sitting in Cochin. Most of my audit assistants are not from Cochin. They are from different parts of Kerala. And fortunately, before the lockdown introduced by India, by the Prime Minister, Kerala government was much ahead of time. 3 or 4 days prior to that itself, they said we are locking down. So since we were updated from the Kerala government saying that they are going to lock down, slowly we started pushing people to their locations. And once they reached locations, I could not contact them. So lack of staff to do the audit was the starting point for me. So starting identifying who were there, who had laptops. Fortunately, we have a laptop for every audit assistant in our office. So it became very easy for us to say, okay, now I need to only give you an internet package. So Elevate, you take a data connection, or if you have a dongle with you, or if you have your own mobile phone, it can be used as a dongle. Put up an internet package, you will start funding the package, and so that you can start using the data. Once the identification of staffs happened, communication was the issue. We started regularizing the communications. Then planning the audit was also a challenge, because each one was sitting in different location. We had to communicate to them. We had to ask them whether they were getting the information. If there is a lack of information from their end, how did they handle? What did they do in that day? How did they complete their work? What access they had to information? These kind of structures was discussed. We almost had the audit managers were always on call. One of my audit managers said, "Sir, I think we are in a situation to call ourselves as a BPO. I'm always on call. My headsets are always plugged to my ears. I'm unable to. Now, if I just remove the headset, I'm at peace. I'm in that kind of a difficult situation." Is what one of them saying at the initial periods of when we are going into audit from home situation. Then we slowly planned our package, or we slowly structured in ways saying that everyone is not on call on a daily basis. We ensured that access to information was available to different people, and we gave substantial documentation from the. We got a substantial support from the clients, so that our documentation is no way disturbed. So one key factor that we understood that we could do audit from home is by a methodology called as data analytics. We fortunately, during 1920, our firm took up a very strong vision. We have been discussing over the times. We were always using Excel as an audit tool over the few years. We took a very conscious call of moving into software-based analytical tools, and that actually helped us very effectively right now. Most of our analysis happened through that analytical software, and our documentation also is taken care because we moved into another software for documentation, which these two softwares are linked. Not costlier. It may not, people may not think it's a very costlier package, and I think it's not costly. It just needs certain time. We just need to identify the right vendor, and once we identify the vendor, we should be able to take it through. So what happened in our audits right now is we started using a lot of data analytics. Once we have data analytics, the audit was much easier. It was performed faster, it was performed better, it improved the whole process. We started using data analytics in internal audits, we started using data analytics for stat audits. Once we start using data analytics, it gave value addition not only for as an auditor, it also gave a lot of insights for my clients. They started appreciating the efforts. So quickly, I will introduce you. I'm sure many of them may be aware of data analytics, maybe using data analytics or using Excel as a very strong audit tool. But for people who have not started, who are just commencing up across, I have split my session here on the data analytics in two parts. One is I just picked up some way our software, how I used our software to pick up some information, and I'm also sharing some Excel audit tools, which I think would be essential for all of us in the present audit scenario. Once in data analytics you are there, data analytics will not work if you don't have three pillars. Data is the core. You need people, you need process, and you need technology. Technology need not be a very costly technology and other things. Even a simple package, simple data analytics packages are available. Basic stuffs will also do good if you are starting with it. Okay. Yeah, leave alone the packages which are offered as analytical tools. If you take up audit through Tally itself in their audit package they are providing these days, it has a lot of analytical tools in it. Okay, I think we can use many such information from the analytical tools for our day-to-day audit, even if there are Tally as a basis. So what are the advantages that we can have? We can have full testing of the population. We need not rely on sample-based testing. Obviously, we will be showing a detailed analysis of few of the samples, but majority of the information will be analyzed could be analyzed through data analytics. I still remember a year back or a year and a half back when Mr. MP Vijay Kumar was in Cochin making a presentation on the future of audits. He was saying very clearly that time itself, saying that no more would be a scenario where clients are expecting sample-based verification. With the present level of softwares and data which is available, most of the clients may be asking us to do 100% audit. It may not be just the sample verification. They may expect us to do 100% audit. And he also quoted many examples. Like he said, if your client is already into Tally and you have the Tally backup, in 3CD many a times he found that the auditor was mentioning, saying that he was not able to verify fully the 40A3 requirement, and based on the sample he has verified, he is satisfied or not. He said if your client is already in Tally or any basic ERP, can't you just download the package and then do an exceptional reporting and satisfy that there is no one there's no expenditure which is more than 10,000 rupees. So these are exceptional based reporting, exceptional based packages which may have to be looked into. Once these are looked into, I think our data sampling, data analysis also will be to a fuller extent. It becomes very efficient. Once I started sharing certain information, it becomes there's an undisputed results which were available. We could identify the risks much ahead of time. We could mitigate it. We used a lot of data analytics in terms of internal financial controls. We identified a lot of issues for the clients for which we did IFC. So all these kind of benefits came in because of data analysis. We can do a targeted sampling and testing also. So I'm going to share certain information right now. This is how we use data analytics in our bank audit for the current year, for March 2020. How we use data analytics, I'll just share certain information with you. Obviously, the data is not the same thing that we have used in one bank. We have taken a sample data from various combinations and have put across. And we were very comfortable to close down the audit this time than in the earlier years. And this year specifically, when the audit time frame was so very short, they gave us the appointment on 1st, started the audit on 3rd, forced us to complete the audit on 5th. So these kind of timelines were there. Otherwise, also the bank branch audit has such stringent timelines. So how do you look at the data? How do you look at analysis and all was always a challenge. So till last year, we always took a sample, went through the registers, went through the records for that particular customer, ensured the documentation was there, ensured that there's no NPA requirement and all those stuff. But we could not do certain further analysis to ensure that there was no fraud, or we did not satisfy ourselves to ensure that there was no fraud. And in present scenario, how a banking environment is happening with frauds across so many banks, which has happened in the past, I think data analytics is a very strong tool which could help us. So I'll just take you through to some of the sample. Hope the people are able to see my screen. This is a sample that I have picked up for this session. This is a random dump sample which I have collected from various sources. I have changed some numbers here and there so that it becomes easier for me to do the analysis for you. This is, let's assume this is the loan information which was shared to you. Okay, there is technically around how many 1,660 line items I've picked up here. So if you go to a branch and there are 1,600 loans which are available, how do you select a sample, or how do you look at stuff? Okay, so in our first data that we analyzed was, we wanted to ensure that all the accounts are opened on working days and not on holidays, especially on Sundays. Okay, so that was our primary criteria. So we started pulling out some information. So when we started analyzing the loan dump, we pulled out the data analytics, and when we ended up with a result like this. In this particular dump, there are 3 loans which was given. The date of loan, opening of date is so and so. We didn't know that we didn't use calendars and other things. We just did a data analytics and started pulling out the numbers, and we identified that 3 of the loans were sanctioned. Not only the 3 is in this sample, but we found out of quite a few loans which were sanctioned on a Sunday or on a holiday. Then we questioned the manager, saying that why was this loan granted? And for our satisfaction, the manager pulled out all these cases and then said, "Sir, see, please look at the category of the loans that has been granted. These loans are based on the credit worthiness of the customer. Say, for example, he's already a credit card holder, and because he has been repaying all his his repayment is always regular, the bank has offered him to enhance his limit, and that enhancement was sent as an SMS. And once the customer acknowledges by sending back the SMS, The date in which he sends back the SMS is the date in which the fresh loan has been granted. Since all this happens online, nothing is happening like the customer coming to the bank or the branch for enhancing the limits. These are possible on a Sunday also. So we could satisfy ourselves saying that yes, okay, we satisfied most all of the items were only this, and we also identified one very old loan, and which was taken I think 2001 or 2005 or something like that. Here I have taken the date as 2002. That it was opened on a Sunday. Then again I said, sir, was this scheme available that time also? Then he went back the records and he found mentioned on the Friday, but it was approved by the hub on the Sunday because it was a very high loan. For our purpose, I've taken a very small value here, but for the purpose of the bank, it was a very high priority loan which was to be approved for a public sector or something like that. So to that extent, it was approved on a Sunday with a special permission saying that we are working on the Sunday only for this purpose. So he came up with records to show it to us. So we were satisfied, yes, there is no possibility of any other loans which is getting approved without the sanctioning authority. The next thing that we pulled out through the software is called positive balances. So again, I'll show you the positive balance data. Again, this we didn't sit and do through Excel. We obviously did through our software, which is also possible through Excel. I'll explain it, and I'll show it through Excel also. These are the data which I have pulled out and said the closing balance in column number F. Hope you are able to see this. Column number F as on 31st of March is a positive balance. They had a sanction limit. They were repaying it, but it had become a positive balance. So again, we started going back to the analyzing the data. How did it become a positive balance? Because most of the loans repayment these days are through online. They have given e-permissions for NIFT online transfers. So automatically EMIs are linked to NIFT, and then they just wiped out. So that being the case, how can this happen was the question. We identified that in many of the cases, it was not it was old cases where they had not given through as a NIFT facility for swiping. If it was NIFT based, it is stopping as on the date of the last installment. Sometimes what happens is if they had given a permission or given a post-dated check for deposit and other things, they were depositing or they were taking the money out without knowing that the loan has happened. They had encashed also. So we had to identify these points, and we had identified these as issues to be raised in our LFAR, which we have communicated to the central statutory auditors, saying that yes, see, you have the issue in terms of your CBS is so and so. Even after the loan is fully repaid, it is pulling up the information. So that we very clearly wanted to explain. The next check that we did was 0 DP, drawing power 0. Again, I'm sure in all the banks they give this loan dump these days. We can easily analyze what is the drawing power, how the drawing power is calculated. If we are satisfied that the drawing power calculated by the CBS itself is very is effective, then we can rely on the data. Hope you can see column number K here. In the dump that I have created, there are so many items which did not have a drawing power, but they did have a balance. Balance as on 31st of March was so and so. So very evidently, this becomes a primary condition for FPA. So we may have to look at the requirement why the drawing power is not looked into. To our surprise again, many cases we found that the drawing power was actually linked to a particular day, the stock statement day, and not on the 31st of March. 31st of March, for some information, the data was not getting captured. Especially majority of the cases, the client had not submitted the customer had not submitted the February and March month stock statements, stock and data statements. So again, it becomes a point to be reported in LFAR again. So that becomes again an identification. Then these items we had to do a detailed analysis of the accounts to satisfy whether it was out of order or whether there's any NPA provisioning. So when we do a lot of analytics like this, we are much confident to say that yes, we are achieving much more efficiency in terms of doing the audit than just taking a random sample and being satisfied with the random sample. Then we also did a check to ensure that there is no accounts without customer ID. In all the branches that we did, fortunately, none of the branches had accounts without customer ID. So it pulled out a report like this. There is no customer ID. There's no account without a customer ID. So that's how it closed it down. Okay. So the next thing that we did as an analysis again was zero balance period account. That means to say in our sample whether there are any period which is zero is what we wanted to check. The column number K, which is zero, is what we wanted to check. Again, we pulled out the analysis to ensure that there is no zero period. Why zero period means? Predominantly, if these are zero period means to that extent the loan is almost getting over. So in these scenarios, if we see, it's all shown as zero period. You can see column number J, it's all mentioned as zero period. So if it is a zero period, then technically meaning to say there's no more period available for him to repay, but still there is an outstanding balance. So then we have to analyze whether there was any renewal which was pending, whether the renewal has not happened, whether there's any NPA case and all. So when this was pulled out for our satisfaction, majority of the cases that period was zero was already classified as NPA. The bank themselves had classified as NPA. So we were left with only 1 or 2 samples wherein the renewal process was happening, and that's why the period was shown as zero. So this also becomes a very, very effective tool for us to ensure that there is no mismatch. Again, some sample for various sanction offers. We can also do analysis based on what are who is the sanction offers, why the sanction office is not mentioned. In these scenarios, we found that the sanction of information was not there. Sanction office means it should be the branch or the head office or the credit hub. Someone should have been mentioned in the CBS. If it's not mentioned, then what is the reason for not mentioning? Okay, in our case, it was mentioned. Only for sample purpose here, I have shown that it is something which is not available. Going to the last of my data, this was something which we really enjoyed doing as audit. This is something called as fuzzy duplicates. In our presentation, is last point, fuzzy name. Okay, this is something that we actually realized and we started doing it. We did this for vendors and all when we went for IFC verification using data analytics. We wanted to try it for banks also. And what this fuzzy name comes out is, it puts out characteristics with similar name. It need not be the name. It can be any text format. Okay. For example, if the narration says check number 93 check number. Okay. Predominantly it's the same check number, but it's been used twice. So there's a possibility of a mistake. Either the narration is created wrongly, or there's a fraud which has happened using the particular check number. So these kind of analytical tools we used for IFC verification for vendor names, vendor numbers, GSTNs, those kind of structures. So when we came to bank audits, we wanted to try that in bank audit also. So we picked up the fuzzy name structure here. So what the bank threw out, what the system threw out was very, very interesting. For example, the first 3 cases is George. One is George CJ, one is George NJ, other is George BJ. The J is also common. Only C, N, and B are different. Okay. So when it pulled out like this, we were unfortunately each is having a different customer ID also. So what analysis we did was we started pulling out these numbers, wanted to satisfy that the people are different. It's not that for one individual there are two customer IDs. So if you look at these data, row number 5 and 6, the highlighted version now, if you see this, both are James Joseph. Okay, it was a practical scenario. I have taken the same name that I had in my experience also. There were two James Josephs. So how to satisfy ourselves was we checked whether the customer ID was different. We checked whether the address was different. Even though that is there, that is not the ideal proof. Then we went up one step and said we went to the KYC norms and started verifying whether the Aadhaar was different. And we satisfied ourselves that Aadhaar also was different. So these kind of informations are predominantly available for us to do. Okay, so data analytics actually reduces a lot of work for us, which will enable us to ensure that the audit is done very, very effectively. I think this is the way forward for us to do the audits. And some common myths which are available in terms of data analytics is that it is applicable only for large numbers with large volume of data. Answer is no. I use data analytics for a small private limited company. So with data analytics, what happens was we started formulating macros with data analytics and all. Now our BRS is just a click away. What happens is we just need to ensure that the software in which we are pulling out the bank information, bank book and the bank statement are available to us. If it's available in any versions, we'll be able to convert it into the mission readable format. And once we give it a mission readable format, just a click away for the BRS to be done. So these are tools which are very, very effective. There are not complex tools at all. We can just basic common sense needs to be applied with. It does not require huge qualification, does not require huge investments and all. But is it that we have to use only data analytics through the software? Answer is no. There also answer is no. It's not that we are using data analytics for the first year. Okay, we have been using data analytics through Excel for quite some time. And I thought I can, if I think I have another 10-15 minutes time. Generally, I close 10-15 minutes ahead of time so that I can answer questions. It's already 7:45. I'll take some 5-10 minutes more just to give you some heads up on how Excel can be used as audit tool. Most of us may be using Excel as an audit tool already, but just for people who are still feeling that data Excel is not just used as an audit tool, we are just using data Excel as some function for adding, subtracting and all. Please look at Excel as a very vibrant tool for data for audit purposes. Okay, for example, the first function which I would like to introduce you is something called pivots. I think all of you must have been aware of pivot. Pivot is not only if you are not aware what pivot is, in insert there is an option called as pivot table. Once you use a pivot table, it will ask for the source. A tab like this will pop up. Once this tab pops up, it is asking you for the range. And once you give the range, it automatically selects the full range by default. Full range provided there is no lines available in between. If there are lines, blank lines available, then it takes to that. If there are full information available, it will take you to that. And I have given an option called as take it to the new worksheet. So once this comes up, a pivot table option comes up like this. Now, being a bank account, what I wanted to do is I wanted to know customer IDs. I wanted to know their names. And I also wanted to know the sanction limits. And I want to know the balance. Okay. So now this becomes an easy way of identifying. So what we used to do earlier was that there's a very effective approach in bank for pivots, which is there in pivot table settings, pivot table options. If you click on pivot table options, there is one thing called display, and there if you give classic pivot table, and say OK, the information actually swaps very easily. Now I have customer IDs in one column, I have all the names in another column, and I have the information of what is the sanction number, sanction values, and the balances as on a particular day. What people generally don't do is that the pivot gives us a lot of filtering options also. If you click on right click and say filter, okay, I want to select top 10 items of what I want to select top 10 items of sanction limits. You can change this. You can be sanction limits or you can be balances. And I say, okay, this is my sample. We have to anyway verify the data. This is my sample. Okay, based on the limits, this has pulled it out. Okay, so these kind of tools are anyway available in pivots. People generally don't use pivot other than just for pulling up information like this. There are so much things that you can do in pivot. The other thing that we generally use is something called as a slicer. It is there under inserts. I'm using the latest version of the Windows Microsoft, but people who are using anything, I think from Microsoft 16 onwards, this slicer option is available. If you click on the slicer, something like this will pop up. Okay, so once a screen like this pops up, why we use slicer predominantly is for open dates. Okay, we say open dates and we say okay, another field like this opens up. So this is all the data of customer IDs which has been opened on various dates. So if very clearly you wanted to verify all those customers who have opened their accounts as on 31st of March, just one click, we will have the information of the person who has opened the account on 31st of March. If you want to open on 23rd of March, one click, these many people open their open the accounts on 23rd of March. So if you want to select from 23rd to 31st, that is also possible. You can select a set of days, it will also come up. So these tools are physically present in Excel, and we used these tools predominantly to pull out the samples majority. In many of the cases, we use these kind of tools to pull out the data. So I have explained about the pivot, I have explained about the slicer. I'm sure all of you would have been using the filter functions. Like here, the filter functions are there. I told you if you want to take the filter function, see some data and all. For example, periods are 0. Like ours, like I used data analytics to pull out the data. This is the periods where it was 0. Okay, and probably my thing is also set blanks. There are so many areas with blanks. So you can also use filters to do the same filtering option that we use through data analytics. Data analytics is just a software which is escalating the Excel. Most of the data analytics or all the data analytics packages use Excel as the basic package. So if you are very confident on using Excel, I think data analytics will be much easier for us to look into. So I've explained about the first few. I think most of us will look up VLOOKUP functions and all that have been very convenient with. I would just tell you about one last thing about consolidate. I don't know how many of you have looked at consolidate functions. Here I have two data. Again, I've taken some random numbers. This is March 2019 numbers, a P&L format, and I have got a P&L format for March 18. Okay. In data, there is something called as consolidate, which is available to us. Yeah, in data, there's a small, it's been shrunk because of the page size. Can you see this icon? This icon is called consolidate function. Can you see? That's a consolidate which is happening. For a consolidate to happen, what we need to do is we have to open a separate Excel sheet and say consolidate. When I'm consolidating, it is asked from where. So here I want to consolidate from two data, P&L. Okay, we generally use consolidate for compare as well as for branch accounting. Okay, so I'm saying consolidate this number and consolidate P&L in 18 and add. Okay, and then I say I will need the top row and the left row. Once if I say okay, look at how beautifully Excel gives us the data. It is picking up the full P&L and is giving the comparative data. Okay, we can also do this by say putting it into one Excel sheet and say this is equal to and then link it to other page. But the beauty of this consolidate is that even if the if the line items are not in the same way, for example, I'm cutting this item and I'm pasting it. I'm inserting a line. I'm swapping these numbers. That means to say I'm saying other income is first and revenue is first. I still go back and I still say consolidate. I still say consolidate these two sheets and say okay. It is still picked up in the right format. The numbers will be picked up in the right format. In otherwise, if you just say give equal to and drag down the equal to, there will be a mismatch in the text. Whereas this consolidate, it is picking up correctly. Okay, there is also another advantage of consolidate. Okay, like if you are using branch accounting purposes, like this is one branch, this is another branch. I say consolidate this data, okay, and give it to me as one single data. I just say don't give me the top, just give me the left and give me the data. This is the total. How will I know this is the total? This is equal to this plus this. So the number matches. So we don't need to give equal to plus and all those things. And most of us are not using Excel to the fullest extent. There are so many filters, or there are so many options which is available in data as an audit tool, which will cut short our time drastically. If that is being used, I think we will be able to come out of this difficult time saying that audit from home, how to look at the data and other things. If data are available in any format, convert into Excel and formatting in Excel and doing the data is very easy and effective. Where all can we use Excel as an audit tool? I'm just given some examples here. In payrolls, we use predominantly to check the payroll verification, the TDS verification, whether one employee is having two bank accounts or whether two employees are having one bank account, or their Aadhaar numbers are different, or their PANs are different. All these kind of structures in accounts payable, payroll payable, and all we have checked. Cash ledger, we use a lot of Excel utility to check whether the single payment more than 10,000, whether there are more, whether the same date, same party, more than 10,000 payments are there. These kind of structures we use. General ledger, a lot of analysis we used to do. Aging analysis we are using for using Excel as an audit tool. So I think once we start having the mix of audit tool with in Excel or data analytics and looking at the audit, I think it will crash a lot of time, and it will also be giving us a lot of benefits instead of doing by the traditional method. Traditional method is not wrong. Traditional method is always needed. Our professional skepticism is always needed. But these tools just enhance our limits, enhance our benefits, by which we will be able to have a comprehensive completion of audit and ensure that there is no any mistake which has happened. In the audits that I told you that we have completed, we checked the data of 11th March to 31st of March. Why I picked up this data? Because most of the sales recognition for them is based on FOR destination. Definitely, no goods should have moved out after the lockdown. So they should not have a sale after 21st. So, but for when we came up, we realized that there were a few sales which was recognized after 21st. Then we started pulling up the documents for that. So data analytics is used in different lines to ensure that there is no possibility of mistakes or frauds. So that's how our audits could get completed very easily. I think with that I've come to the end of my session. I think it's almost time also. I'm correctly on time at 8 o'clock. I am open for any questions. I can.
Yeah, Rangarajan, thank you so much. A variety of things on MCA, the bank audits, and the use of Excel. I think you've covered entire things, and I think it is upon us to kind of use these tools, small and big, to do the audits effectively. And every time you can come up with new things. I always tell Excel, there's no one way of doing things. You and I can arrive at the same result doing two different things, and both can be right. So it is how better you make use of technology.
How
Yeah, we'll
better,
take a
how quickly also we do. That's the challenge. I can do it. We each year when we escalate audit tools, each year we find out that okay, last year we should have done this. It's much more easier to get the data in this format. Evolution amongst us also happens when you are using audit tools.
Yeah, Rangarajan, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'll be able to share mine.
Yes, sir, sure. Has the screen been stopped?
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
show mine.
Yeah.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sure.
You can read the questions and take one by one, Rangarajan.
Yes, sir. Sure. When the bank failed to fill criteria creation of charge at the time of the original sanction, can CHG1 now be filed at the renewal or limits is being imposed? Sir, technically speaking, logically it's no. If it goes as a new loan, then only this thing happens. If the old loan is only renewed, then predominantly this doesn't happen. We may have to file the old form. We may have to pay some penalty and then file the form and then go for renewal. That's the only way it happens. In terms of renewal also, there may be enhancement of security and other things. If such thing happens, then we have to file the charge again. So when you're filing that charge, you have to take care of it. So if you are, then it's a modification of charge. But if it's a modification of charge, the original charge should be there. Then only you can modify. If the original charge is not there, modification will not happen. So that is one thing which will have to be looked into. Question number 2 is DYC DAR3 KYC deadline as of now. Compliances as of now they have extended majority. I think till 30th September they have blanketly said any forms which has to be filed from April onwards. If it has to be filed right now, you can file it before 30th of September. So without much of an issue. That's how they have said. So I think we can use that benefit right now. Question number 3, is there any specific format declaration to be filed by a proposed Nidhi company while applying its name through run facility in MMCA 21 portal? Sorry, sir, and I have not tried any such thing. I have not filed for a Nidhi company, so I'm not able to look at that information. But I don't think that should be a challenge. There's no specific format or not. I think the same procedures which is applicable should be applicable here also. I don't think there should be any difficulty in that. Question number 4, whether arrangements of sale or sale deed of land or both are required to be filed in MGT 14, whether the board of directors can authorize its employee simply by passing a board resolution for registering sale of immovable property on behalf of the company without registering GPA with the sub-register. Power of okay. Technically speaking, sir, when the board resolution is passed, the power of attorney also is given. That power of attorney is mandatory, and without that, we will not be able to do it. So, when a sale agreement is happening, MGT 14 may be required. 170 requirements comes in, then we may have to file this form. There's no other option. It has to be taken care. Then question number 5. A company had provided interest on MSME for FY 18-19, disclosed in MSME form, but not paid only the principal to the MSME supplier in financial year. The interest provided still outstanding as on date. So should the same interest again be charged on the outstanding interest? Answer is yes. There's no other option. This is not there in this act. The MSME Act of 2006 emphasizes that any principal on interest interest on interest also is a requirement. Again, this in that case, again, MSME Form 1 filing will be coming into picture. Further to my earlier question, MSME interest will have to be disclosed in MSME for the current year. Yes, we have to disclose in the current year also. There is no other option. Please ensure that you disallow the interest also for income tax purposes. That is also a mandatory requirement. Whether COVID-19 relief is available for filing old forms like CHG1 and other things. I think I discussed this when I was taking the session also. Just because of COVID, any old form which has to be filed, I have not filed means does not mean that I cannot, I will not be penalized. It will definitely be penalized. I think one of the company secretaries here tried to file that they had the interest and penalty coming till date. It was not stopping till 31st of March. I told him that you try probably till 31st of March only the interest will be charged. After that, it's not be charged because of COVID reasons. Then he said, no, it's charging till date. So I don't think the MCA site has taken that into picture. It will charge interest, no other option. I have a couple of questions. Good afternoon, good evening, sir. I have a couple of questions. Good evening. With respect to filing of annual returns of active non-compliant private limited company, which has two directors, where one of them got deceased. Now, please guide me as to how to proceed with the annual return filing, as MCA is not allowing me to file the return to or appoint a new director. Yes, this challenge many times I think I have not faced, but many people have asked me. One solution that I think here what we did was we applied it to the ROC. The ROC gave us special permission and we filed an admission first. Once the admission was filed, then this was there. But again, there was a permission with the special permission of ROC they could do. Otherwise, I don't think there's an MCA as such site has not given us an option, is what I feel. I may be wrong. I'm not sure, but here in Cochin, when some similar issues came up, when I spoke to the ROC that time, he said you send the details to me. So we sent the company secretary to him, and he was able to give an option to allow first admission, then the disease came in. That is one of the things that happens. And as a matter of policy, I think in 2015 or 16, our firm started issuing some guidelines to all our clients. None of the clients will have two directors. It should be minimum 3 directors. Even though private limited company, their minimum is only 2. We will always have 2 directors or 3 directors and 3 shareholders. It is always safer. We don't know how technology will play. This is one very clear evidence how technology is playing to the negative. So to be always on the safer side, have 2 or 3, have 3 or more people. We don't have the minimum number alone. If a public limited company, 7 means 8 or 9. You must always have one number higher. When you're planning for the future also, please ensure that you have this minimum requirement so that this kind of documentation is not, this kind of hindrance does not happen. Sometimes when I'm trying to log in an MCA website, from for uploading e-forms, there was some error while uploading. The web page got disabled. Following error had occurred while submitting page also. Another user is currently logged in within the same user ID. Log out and log in. Log out the other user. When the web page itself got disabled, then the question is coming out of logout. I have tried on other systems and different browsers for the same error. To trial and error, I created a new user ID, but the similar issue is when trying to log in, but the same error is popping up. Is these kind of situations what to do? Thanks in advance. Okay. I have not faced these errors. What we happening is for us in our office, we have 3 dedicated systems. One system for MCA uploads alone, one system for GST uploads alone, one system for other uploads. Even though for GST, income tax and all, we can upload using other laptops as well. We have 3 desktops exclusively for these MCA and other softwares, especially when we are filing cess-based returns and all, return for cess, all those kind of structures. Those kind of Javas are completely different. If your Java issue is there, then probably this issue might be there. You are saying that even after using a different email ID, the same, different user ID, the same error is coming. Then probably it could be a Java related issue. Please recheck your Java.
Yeah, Rangarajan sir, I have faced this issue. So Satish Subraidu sir, this issue actually what happens is there is an issue in the system. I don't know the technical issue, but normally within 12 hours it gets resolved. Even I've had that where, for example, you're logged into an ID, you don't log out, or you log out, or for whatever reason the browser crashes. It remains logged in on the MCA portal continuously. You're trying to log in repeatedly. Within 12 hours it corrects. If it does not, you raise a ticket. And MCA within 2 days they resolve it. So they're very, very responsive. So you raise a ticket on the MCA website, and they will log it out manually from their end. They will do it. So next day you will be able to log it. So it's more of a technical issue rather than.
Okay.
Yeah. Rangarajan, you could add one more system in your office to see that the webinars also you're able to participate.
So for webinars, we have moved up, sir. We have a TV right now in office. We connect to the TV and ensure that all of them attend the webinar. So next, is it mandatory for all types of companies to conduct meetings through VC? Sir, technically you don't need VC as an option. Okay, but in the Corona times right now, especially in this next 6 months period, we must at least have one board meeting. If we are having directors sitting in different locations and they are not able to travel, or they have to travel only for one board meeting, with the the 14 days of quarantine that you may have to have before and after the visits and all, it may not be logical for us to travel for one single day. So because of this issue, this 6 months, I think most of us, if the directors are sitting in different locations, will definitely have at least one video conferencing meeting. If you have directors sitting, if it's just a husband and wife director, then they can sit at home or they can go to the office and then have the board meeting conducted. No issues at all. But if they are sitting at different locations and there is no possibility for commuting, then we may have to have at least one video conferencing right now. So that is why I said that is the importance of this particular video conferencing for board meetings. When a company conducts AGM or EGM through VC, is it possible that by giving the reason of technical glitches, the management can avoid the particular person from attending or resembling the room page? It will be difficult for outsider to prove that the management deliberately did it. In such situation, what is the right of the shareholder? Technically, sir, this is not what should not happen actually. If someone is raising an issue saying that in video conferencing for board meetings we have faced this, as I told you, the audit committee chairman just went off. He was not available for 15 minutes. We didn't know that. So then when we went back and then asked him, he didn't attend one particular agenda. So we went back to that agenda. From there on, we had to start again. Yes, it is a glitch. We have to ensure that that glitch is addressed to immediately. If someone raises a question, that's why in the AGM, they have given you a hotline. They have made sure that there should be a particular hotline. If someone addresses that hotline, someone calls to that hotline, it is our requirement. If someone is not picking up that hotline, then definitely the shareholder can write to the ROC. There is no doubt about it. If there are any ways of connecting it back to him, then they should have given that methodology to connect. I don't think it is right on the part of the company to say technical glitches and hence one person cannot attend. That is not advisable, and that's not correct also. Then question number 10, verification of documents. When we receive the scanned copy of invoices, it's very much possible that the invoice itself is photoshopped as an alternative base for vital information. For example, laptop purchased in the personal name of the director can be fabricated in the company's name. keeping in the intact the details. Can a disclaimer be issued? If yes, what is the sanctity of audit? How to safeguard activities of this? Sir, why are you worried about all this? There is GST nowadays. If the company has purchased purchased a laptop for office purposes, then GST is anyway there. If it is there in 2 years, then you link it to that. There's no issues. See, when the GST was introduced, one of the primary things that I told my clients was, let's don't worry about things at all. No possibility of fraud and other things. Yes, there are still entities which have fraudulent invoices for GST inputs and other things. I'm not saying no, but effectively, if there are legal invoices for any activity that we do, including a paper purchase, pen purchase for office, if the GST is given and B2B invoice is given, it automatically comes into our 2A. If 2A is scrutinized, then obviously things are taken care. So in one of the data analytics technique that we are using right now for present audit is we are taking the EVA bill for analysis. All the EVA bill for sales or all the EVA bill for purchases. We want to ensure that it's been mapped, so that if there's any EVA bill for which there is no document in our purchase or sale in our accounts, or there is a there's a purchase which there's no EVA bill. Both ways we are trying to ensure as a data analytic technique to ensure that there is no fraudulent entries just been mapped. So I think we can definitely use that as a technique, sir. Yes, scanned copies can be fraudulent. I don't deny that fact. I don't think disclaimer or management representation letter will come to our help in that scenario. What we can do is we can ensure that the scanned copy, I think there are tools also to check whether some Photoshop version is there. I think one of my office staffs pulled up, and when I gave a document to him, he said it's Photoshop. I asked him how. He said you can click on that. You can go to the Photoshop tool and click on some icon. It will identify one particular area where it has been black marked or something like that. So we will identify whether it's been photoshopped or not. Okay, so that is still possible. This was we tried to use for a flyer for one of our events. He said, sir, this flyer that's been photoshopped with someone. So we should take that original flyer so that we can do a better version. So that's how we did it. So I think there is some tools available to do that also. Then a private limited company client have 2 directors who are also the shareholders. One of them is an NRI. Given the travel may not be possible for next few months, AGM will have to be done via video conferencing. Precautions that can be taken to issue that may arise. Okay, fine. All the points I've mentioned in the slide is only precautions, sir. There are around 25-30 points given in the notification as to what all should be done. What I have put in these slides are only precautions. Okay, please ensure that the directors, both the shareholders, directors are available. Always there should be a cross check after every agenda, every meeting, every point in the notice, every agenda in the notice. They must ensure that both of them are on the same page. There is no disconnection, and they should ensure that all the resolutions are passed. If there's anything, we can look at it suitably. Okay, then question 12. Certain ERPs like SAP, Tally, they have an inbuilt audit tool, and the audit modules are not adequate. Do you suggest additional softwares? Additional softwares, if you need, you take, sir. That is what I would say. Not necessarily. We took it up because we felt instead of we struggling with trying to figure out something in Excel, these softwares can throw it out in click of a button. Yes, then it is needed. And is the software costly? No, technically. There are softwares available for some 8,000, 9,000 rupees also. It can goes up. It depends on how much we want those analytical tools. If you feel for last 7 to 8 years or 6 to 7 years at least, we have been using Excel as an audit tool. Most of our analysis, data analysis was through Excel. Excel is a very good package. The only thing is we should upgrade Excel as in when the upgradation comes. And I also think that we should use is we should start learning a lot of Excel as an audit tool as an versions. We as partners and audit managers and all started attending so many sessions. In fact, in our office these days we have audit report in Excel. Its concatenate function is there's one function called concatenate. we give a concatenate function and freeze the audit report. Why? Because the main problem with the article assistance and all was copy paste. They will copy paste. First page the company name will be right. Third page the company name will be wrong, or the date will be wrong. Or one page they'll say cash flow is applicable, another page they'll say cash flow is not available. All these confusions started coming up. So now we have an Excel sheet wherein the audit report is frozen. There is a basic details page. If you give the basic page correctly, the audit report is auto-filled. We don't need to recheck. Okay, it's just once what we do is we just ask the audit assistants to take the control sheet print or check. We'll check the control sheet. If the control sheet is okay, we freeze the control sheet. We have a macro to freeze the control sheet also. We freeze the control sheet, then take the print of the audit report. So the wording does not change. So you can use Excel to various extents. What I have showed in my slides is only few of them. Okay, but these are the at least essentials that we need to use. If you're using these itself, then there are a lot of things that we can do. So, and I don't think audit tool is a mandatory requirement. If you feel yes, you need to do it, please take ahead. It is a very, very useful item. We have started crashing down so much of our time frames as such because most of our reconciliations and all are only macro based now. The program, click of a button, give us data in the particular format, it automatically maps. So what an audit assistant used to do as a BRS verification for one day, it's a matter of 15 minutes maximum. Once the data output is thrown, we just need to check whether the data, is there any error in the data output. If that is satisfied, then we just close it out. So there's a lot of savings that can come. If you definitely can take it up. Then is it mandatory for auditors to attend AGM? If yes, how is it possible for more AGMs to attend in September last week? Yes, sir, it is mandatory. I think this is something which was unfortunately many of them missed it out because section 146 of the Companies Act very clearly says auditor should be present in all the general meetings, either physically through him or through his representative. That representative should also be a chartered accountant, is what it says. If it is not there, he must take approval from the shareholders, giving the valid reason why he is not able to attend the meeting. Okay, that is a mandatory document which has to go in the AGM minutes. Okay, so that cannot be done on the date of the AGM. Okay, so technically speaking, it is mandatory. Everyone has to attend. So that's why, as I told you, we give a time slot. 5-6 days time slot is given for various cities. One city means all the companies in that city, mandatory that the AGM should be there. So that one of us will be either physically present. At least going forward, now through VC we can anyway attend. Only thing is it gets recorded. Please ensure that you record the VC and then take it. That should be possible.
Yeah, Abhishek, you can just check if there are any further questions. In fact, we have to be very careful when we use technology. Like one of the audit reports, he wanted the month from May to June. He put Control F, May change to June. In that report, there are a lot of places auditor may do this, all got changed to June. So have to be very careful when you change that only the intended place it gets changed. Yeah, Abhishek,
there are only two more. There are only two more questions. I will just read them out. Whether all the aspects of company law have been addressed on account of COVID-19 situation, or there are some more clarifications that are required. Your view, please.
Majority has been addressed, sir. I don't think in terms of form filing, in terms of meetings, I think these are the things which are disturbed because of COVID, because of work from home situation, not able to go to office kind of situations. I think that has been majority taken care. Slowly, when they started issuing notifications relating to VC for AGMs and all, I think more or less they have covered. I don't think much of an issue is there in terms of that.
Next one is from CA Alama Prabhu sir. In cases where GST invoice is not given or composition invoice.
Okay, the example where it is Photoshop and some
Photoshopping.
Yes. Okay.
Then I think we have to start using audit tools, Photoshopping tools to ensure that there is no mismatches happening. I think
these challenges will always be there because the PDF files today can be edited just like that. Those days say no, don't depend on a Word file, depend on a PDF file. Today your ITR, any name can be put, all those things are being actually happening. So to be very, very careful, kind of do some additional checks to do. So we have to be very
Correct.
careful when we use.
In fact,
Very
an
true, sir.
experience
Very
that I had while auditing a 2,500 crore company, such a huge company, you would think that they'd have all the internal controls in place. Interestingly, what happened is they had many purchases of fixed assets, big value assets during the year. And while I was watching it, while I was auditing and I was watching it, I found that many of the additions of fixed assets, which were made mid-year, December, January, all of them had only a single serial number, invoice number 1, invoice number 3. So all of them were like that. So just by chance, I called the whoever is the supplier of the fixed asset. 3 or 4 of them I started calling. They are all non-existent numbers. So then it came to light that these are not real. Then when we went to inspect the fixed assets, they said it's in some other factory, it is here, it is there, but they are not able to prove it. So they were bogus. And this is before computers and all were in vogue. It was still a hard copy invoice. That itself they were forging and they were creating all of these things. So you can imagine in the current scenario, given Photoshop and the advanced technology today, it's definitely going to be a bigger challenge. We definitely have to be careful in these
true.
circumstances.
Very true. Very true. I think
In fact,
technology has its benefits as well as its challenges. We have to grasp the advantages and ensure that we are mitigating our risk in terms of the challenges.
fine, Abhishek. I think we had an excellent 3-day session where we have covered entire things what we could think of. Maybe we'll have some more sessions specifically as and when we think that will be appropriate. So thank you so much, Rangarajan sir. Over to you, Abhishek, for a well-deserved vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dynamic Chairman of SIRC, Shri C.A. Dungarchand Jain, for organizing this workshop and making this happen. I'd like to place my gratitude and thanks to CAG Rangarajan sir, who has joined us, gave a lovely presentation, and even in fact showed live demo of how to use the Excel in practical scenarios, shared his view on various aspects. So it was a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much, Rangarajan sir. Your years of experience really came into total display there. So thanks once again for that. I also thank all the members who joined us for this 3-day workshop. It was a unique workshop, and when chairman had conceptualized it, we were discussing, thinking how very beneficial will it be, will people receive it. More than 300 participants on a regular basis every day we have been having. So clearly you have all enjoyed the program. We have been reading the feedback, so thank you so much for the kind words. And of course, if you have any better things that we can do better feedback, you can feel free to share it. You don't have to feel restrained. We are happy to listen and take it and work on it. In fact, we have planned many more programs, so I'll take this as an opportunity to announce some of the programs that we have planned. As I already told you, on 13th, that is tomorrow, we have already planned for a standards on auditing program that is from 4 to 7 p.m. CA Bhavani Balasubramaniam will be speaking, and as I told in the previous programs, in fact, the chairman and I were discussing it, mandatory requirement is there to comply with CPARs pertaining to auditing and assurance standards and professional ethics, both of them. So therefore, there's a requirement every year you have to complete 2 + 2 hours, at least minimum 2 hours of auditing and assurance standards CPE plus 2 hours of professional ethics. We have currently organized for auditing and assurance. We are also will be announcing soon on professional ethics. So for the next 3 Saturdays, that is starting tomorrow, and then for the other 2 coming Saturdays after this Saturday, that is after tomorrow, we have programs on standards and auditing starting from 4 to 7 p.m. So tomorrow is the first program. On 15th of June, on Monday, we have the Vice Chairman of the Income Tax Settlement Commission who's joining us live from Bombay, who will be taking us through on the procedure and practice of the Income Tax Settlement Commission. It's a huge area of practice, very lucrative and remunerative area. So we have got the Vice Chairman, just recently retired, IRS Hukumchand Jain, who will be joining us. Then on 17th of June, we have a program on GST, that is reverse charge mechanism, and the interplay of the recent notifications on this. We have got, in fact, an elected member from Delhi. He was the NIRC chairman, CA Rajendra Arora. He'll be joining us live at 6 p.m. on 17th of June. On 18th of June, we have a program on Power Query and Power Pivot tool for audits. In fact, some of it Rangarajan sir was mentioning today. We've got a reputed speaker, CA Ratnagiri, who's joining us live from Sivakasi on 18th of June. And that program is at 5 p.m. And of course, finally, on 19th of June, as I already announced, we have a program where we have IRS Selva Ganesh, will be taking us through the practical aspects of survey search and seizure, because these are we are having a program settlement commission and survey search and seizure in the same week, so that you can enjoy the interplay of the two, and maybe you can benefit most out of it. And following, we are planning a workshop also, a 5-day workshop. We'll announce that soon when the particulars get finalized. That is still in plan. And of course, as I already told you, the auditing assurance standard programs for the upcoming Saturdays. We request you all to please join us and do share your feedback. We'll be happy to organize more programs. Thank you so much for joining. I once again thank CAG Rangarajan for a wonderful presentation. And I thank our chairman, my chairman, CA Dungarchan Jain, for playing such a pivotal role and leading from the front. Thank you.
Thank you all of you. Thank you, Rangarajan ji. Thank you.